So,
Hi, Sri.
hi Niladri. Hi everyone. Welcome to this live session today. Here we'll be talking with our author Niladri Chakraborty about his book Cycle of Cliches. First things first, I would like you to introduce about yourself and your book, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Isvi, for having me on this. And hi to everyone. Uh, as Isvi has already mentioned, I'm Niladri Chakraborty, the author of this book, Cycle of Cliches. This is my first novel. Before taking this work and taking up this particular work, I mostly used to write short stories, poems, and essays for newspapers and magazines. I grew up in a city called Guwahati. I think most of you are aware. It's the capital city of Assam. And this book, Cycle of Cliches, the story is based on that particular city. And as for living, I have a day job too. So mostly finding out time from my day job, I invest into writing and reading because I believe good writing happens only when you do good reading. Uh, in my family, I have, it's my wife and my two kids. I live in Kolkata. I don't know more.
Okay. Yeah, obviously we'll be talking much more about the book today. So
Yes.
you talked about writing for a while now. So you've also written for the Assam Tribune and Twist and Twain, and like that's quite a feat. So like, can you tell us about your history with writing itself? When did you start writing? Like why do you write? So like just everything, your passion for it.
Yeah. Uh, I'm really very excited to talk about it. Writing started pretty early. I think it starts pretty early for most of the people nowadays. But yeah, in my case also, it started pretty early during my school days. But at that time, writing was kind of very different for me. I mean, it was mostly writing articles, short articles for the newspapers. In the Assam Tribune, they used to have a section for for children. So there I used to send poems and small write-ups on whatever used to come to my mind. Some of them got published, some of them got rejected, which is the case with most of the authors. Uh, Honestly, I never thought of taking up writing seriously until a particular age. My hometown, as I mentioned, is Guwahati. I left
Right.
Guwahati for job. I lived in other cities, but the way it happens, always you feel a connection towards your to your hometown, wherever you are.
Mhm.
So I felt at one point in time that the best way to remain connected to my roots, to my hometown, is to bring up certain stories, or I mean bring alive certain stories that I experienced while growing up there. So that is when I actually took writing a bit seriously. I started writing short stories. I would go back to the city to find out new stories as well, whatever were going around, stories that I would hear from my childhood friends, or from my relatives, or even generally writing started getting a bit into me. But that started quite late. I mean,
Okay.
I was doing my post graduation. That's when it started. That coming in, and then if you know about Guwahati, you might also have this idea that at one point in time, it used to be kind of the hotbed of all terrorist activities during
Right.
90s, 2000. That is the early 2000s. So that's when I actually grew up there. So a lot of memories also started coming in, and there was this urge to bring alive certain stories that I felt that may remain untold for forever. If you read
Right.
the stories from Guwahati, I mean, not from Guwahati, I mean from Assam, you will find a lot of beautiful stories written by great authors. And when I say great authors, these authors have their individual voices, and they bring up
Mm.
that moment of crisis, that moment of tension so wonderfully that you'll feel like reading one writer after another. While reading all these great authors, I also realized that there is one aspect that needs to be brought out, and if I can do that, nothing like it. So that aspect is about the urban people, the urban youth growing up there, and what kind of aspirations, desires they have, and how they actually want to you know march forward despite that dark backdrop being there.
Mm.
And that is how this journey actually started. This book also started that way.
Okay.
So uh, contributing to Assam Tribune, that also went on for a while. And I even send stories now. uh,
Okay.
so some of them get published, some of them don't get published. So it's, I think, that's
Yeah.
how it goes on.
Okay. Well, before we continue this conversation, I just wanted to say to the audience that if you have any questions for our author, all your questions are welcome. But I will try to address them by the end of the interview. So just feel free to send in your questions and we'll get to them in a while. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, you're just talking about this nostalgic factor you have with your roots, and I mean, in the book itself, this is something that is very strong to the like. This is something that the character feels a lot. So it seems to me
Yeah.
that there's a lot of inspiration that you have taken from your own self, because in your introduction you do mention that this story, all these stories comes from all the things that you've heard and listened to and just everything that growing up. But also looks like you yourself, like the book itself was inspired by you. So talking about that, it took you 9 years to write this novel, and you have definitely mentioned how debutant novelists goes through all the trials and tribulations. So like, can you elaborate on that, like all the trials and tribulations that you went through while writing this book, like pushing this forward?
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you, and this may sound very funny. Okay. So
Okay.
I used to read, I mean, most of us, I think, nowadays read a lot, and we do a lot of other activities as well. And we watch a lot of web series nowadays,
Mhm.
movies and stuff like that. So when the idea of taking writing seriously came up, I mean, when it struck my head, the first thing that came up is that, with this idea, with the seed of the story, I'll churn out a masterpiece or something like that. And then there will be, publishers kind of, I would send them and they would say, oh yeah, we've got a book that we really want to publish
Mhm.
and stuff like that. All those things are going to happen. And people will go, Kaga, okay, a great thing has been written, never before has, all those things are going to happen. Those thoughts used to come in when I started off. As I finished my first draft finished pretty early. It didn't even take 4 months, uh,
Okay.
4.5 months. But that was 9 years ago when my daughter was just 6 months old.
Okay.
So I wrote it down and then I sent it to all the publishers. Nowadays, you can send it to the publishers via email and
Mhm.
prepare the publishing proposal. And I also found out all the great literary agents all around the world, and I even send it out to them. And then came, then struck the reality that it's not that easy.
Mm.
So I started, it's not that easy. Rejection started coming in, and that kind of initially, even what I realized is that you are not in a position to accept rejections. It
Mm.
gradually seeps in that rejections is part and parcel of this journey. So meanwhile, I even befriended a few of the a few authors as well, who are published by renowned publishers all around the world. They're doing great job. So one of the key messages that I received during this conversation is that the the idea is to keep writing. Even if you're writing
Mhm.
trash, the idea is to keep writing and
Mhm.
keep revising until and unless you are absolutely confident that you can go ahead with the book.
Mm.
So it is the revision that actually took so many years. So
Okay.
one, I would revise the next draft and then read through it. I would even send it out to some of my uh, friends who are kind of into reading and stuff. So they would give their feedback. We don't like this piece. It gets stuck here. I don't know how you're going to come out with all the loop and all those things, all those feedback that really helped. And it
Mm.
took almost, I would say, 8 years just to keep revising one draft after another. The final draft that went into publication, that was the 12th draft, I think. So,
Okay.
uh, so that that piece, and during this time, I also did some, kind of focused reading. This book, if as you have already read it, you might have seen that this doesn't follow a a very well-defined plot structure, as in
Yeah.
you cannot mark out at certain points, okay, this is where the climax is, this is where
Mhm.
so the character, it's a narrative that comes out of the of the narrator's mind, of the
Mhm.
primary of the protagonist's mind, the way he gets triggers
Mhm.
around certain things.
Right.
So I wanted to keep this style, but I was also kind of cautious, whether this will be accepted. This
Mm.
is kind of an experiment, and at the same time, I mean, there's also this possibility that it might go haywire, and how am I going to bring in all stuff together? And so that I think was the most challenging part in the entire journey. And one of the most important insights during these years has been that I think, I mean, all of us would agree that it's very important to come back to your writing desk, or if you're writing on a
Mhm.
diary, it's important to come back every morning or whatever hour suits you to come back to that and write at least a few lines, even if you're writing trash. You can
Right.
anyways revise it. I
Right.
think that's the key. That's been the key insight. It's
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all the writers and the authors who've joined us today on this live can relate to this factor as well. Because I mean, it's not just enough for us to believe in our stories, like this is something that we should be doing, but it's also about, like, the world itself accepting it. And that whole process can be a little daunting, and it can take years, obviously. So
right.
yeah, I mean, I completely understand that. So, while talking about the book itself, like, tell me about the motivation behind this character and, like, specifically this plot. Like, yeah, obviously, you've talked about all the great voices that there are from Assam and Guwahati, especially. But obviously, you're one of them now too. So, like, what was your motivation behind this? And also your motivation behind the title itself, which is The Cycle of Cliches. So, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, if I talk about motivation, the first thing is yearnings, you know,
Mm-hmm.
longings, I would say.
Mm.
So, as I mentioned in one of the previous responses, that uh, one of the things that remained, I feel, to some extent, it has remained untold, is about the yearnings of the youth growing up during that time. You know, some people have left, a lot of people have left the city or the state to pursue greater things, pursue something better, with the kind of disappointment that nothing is going to happen in that state. Some people stayed back
Mhm.
and pursued their yearning. Some people who went out, they came back after some time. They took up a very difficult uh, lifestyles at certain point of time. So these were the kind of narratives that actually interested me.
Mhm.
Okay, and you go to the city or any upcoming city, you'll find such narratives kind of scattered everywhere, kind of
Right.
sprinkled everywhere. And
Mm.
I think you know if you can, I mean, I felt that if I can bring this out, it would be, I wouldn't say it's a contribution, but I think it will be a service to the place that I grew up.
Mm.
So it was
Right.
with this mindset that that this particular city, Guwahati, or the state Assam where I grew up, I have got so many things from there. I studied there. I have all my friends there,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure whether you've been there, but you know the people who have been there, they know how beautiful it is.
It
So there are
is.
a lot of
Yeah.
memories, and
Mhm.
there are a lot of things that keep used to keep coming in. So I felt that if I can portray that, if I can bring it out, maybe that is one of the smallest offerings that I can make to the place that I grew up.
Mhm.
Uh, as far as the title is concerned, cycle of
Right.
cliches. I mean, what are cliches basically? I mean, things that you keep hearing for over for a long time. Some of them you like, some of them you just grow bored of at certain
Mhm.
point of time, but they don't keep coming. I mean, like during our school days,
Mhm.
one of the things, even if the entire classroom is quiet, you will still find the teacher coming in and telling you, guys, keep quiet, don't make any
Yeah.
noise. That by the time you leave school, that becomes a cliche, but you know you don't like it at one point in time, but when you revisit that same cliche at one later in your later years, you might even love that. Now the problem with cliches is that they keep on repeating, just keeps on going round and round and round until you take a special leap, to go beyond that. Mostly those cliches that are kind of unwelcome, the cliches that you don't
Mhm.
want to keep haunting you again and again.
Right.
So in order to get out of that, the only way is to take a leap, that may seem kind of impossible, that may seem kind of daunting, that may seem you know at at times they may also those leaps may also come across as very irresponsible. But you
Mhm.
need to take one such leap
Mhm.
to go beyond your cliches. So whether the protagonist and all the characters, whether they are able to go beyond their cliches and get beyond the take those leaps, that is the story all about as well. So I won't play a spoil sport and give out the entire story, but yeah, I mean, in nutshell, that is whether they are able to make it or not, in their own small ways. And that is also the narrative that you find, kind of, in abundance in that city. The way people have transformed their
Mhm.
lives from with that backdrop in their mind constantly. If you allow, I can narrate one incident that actually happened with me.
Of course, of
Uh,
course.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
was I had just completed my uh, graduation, and
Mhm.
during those times, the first thing that your family would tell you after graduation was to look for a job. At that
Right.
time, we used to have CP highways, internet cafes. Internet was,
Mhm.
are not. It was kind of scarce. It was not something like we have nowadays. So we used to go to CP highways and look at the different job sites and for jobs across the country, wherever a job is available. Uh, and one of the days when I was doing that, suddenly there was a huge noise, as if some building has just fallen off or something like that.
Okay.
I couldn't realize what exactly happened. And then there was this huge commotion, a huge noise. There's a bomb blast just outside.
Mhm.
So I look back and I see a Maruti van. Those Maruti Omni vans,
Yeah.
totally, kind of crumbled, and you know the, there's kind of the entire place is kind of there. Place is kind of in tatters, and that there are
Mhm.
people rushing around. Fortunately, there were no casualties because there were no one around that Maruti Omni.
Okay.
After that, the owner of the Maruti Omni came out. There was a bank just close by. He
Mhm.
came out and he sat down on the road and he started crying. It was a brand new Maruti only that he had brought, and he knows that he had lost his entire investment and everything. So
Yeah.
these kind of narratives, I met this same guy, this person, because it happened in my locality. So people are kind of, I was, in as it happens in most of our localities across India, you know people by face. You might have
Yeah.
grown up with them from a very early age.
Yeah.
So I met this person almost after 10 years.
Okay.
And then I see he's running a successful, transport business.
Okay.
Running a successful transport business. He has a number of, small vehicles that plies
Mhm.
in the city as public transport. And I was really surprised. I mean, on that day, that the image that got stuck in my mind, he was simply sitting on the road as if his entire life is devastated. But you
Mhm.
meet him after a few years and you see that transformation. It brings out a kind of joy.
Mhm.
You really feel good. And those are the kind of narratives that really attracted me.
Mhm.
And I think you'll find a bit of it in this one as well. So some of those narratives are kind of successful transformation. Some of those are, kind of partially successful, and some of them which are not successful, they might have left a, deep impression on the others as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but I definitely see all these things in the book itself, specifically the yearning part of it and the nostalgic factors that you're talking about, right? So, I mean, one of the things that I really liked and which obviously connects with what you're saying as well is like, how you try to bridge the cultural gaps between what we are reading and what we know, right? So I mean, you evoke this sort of like a sensory imagery, like you paint this beautiful world that, and right now, especially during the pandemic, which we are definitely longing for, because like we're stuck in our homes as well, right? So was that a conscious decision to just like sort of giving the readers a context of the language itself, how to pronounce certain words, or familiarizing them with like food and just the entire culture?
Yes, definitely. That was a conscious effort. That was a
Mm-hmm.
because India. I mean, if you look at the entire country,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we have this thing, unity in diversity. I mean, every 15 kilometers the food habits changed and
Right.
changes. The way you speak the same language might differ,
Right.
and even your behavior patterns may differ to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain very beautiful and very you know uh, peculiar kind of stuff that are there in Assam as well. There are certain words that are pronounced slightly differently. I mean, quite differently from they are pronounced in other languages. Uh, so that is one of the reasons that I put that note in, that there's this particular sound uh,
Mm-hmm.
in Hindi or in other languages. It's the sir sound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that sir sound is pronounced a bit differently. I mean that uh, in certain areas
Mm-hmm.
in Assamese. Assamese also has a sir sound, but that is denoted by a different letter uh, in other languages.
Right.
Okay, so there are these nitty-gritties which you may get a hint of in the author note section. So bringing that out, I felt that there are, if I'm able to bring out these wonderful nitty-gritties of culture, I think this would also make the book come alive much
Right.
more than putting it in a normal platter and just presenting to the audience, I mean to the readers.
Mhm.
So that is why it was a conscious decision. But there were certain things that also came in quite naturally. I mean, if
Mhm.
when you go to the book, you will find references to certain Assamese songs.
Right. Yeah.
So those were kind of coincidences as well. I mean, maybe while writing that piece or that section, that was the song I was listening to, and that
Mm.
instantly struck me. Okay, I mean, this is a beautiful song. I mean, people might want to, have it here. And what I've done in addition to mentioning those songs is also, I made an attempt to give a English translation of
Mm.
those lines as well,
Yeah.
so that they can, so that people who do not know Assamese, they can relate to those,
Mhm.
uh, songs. Although it's the same feelings, maybe expressed in slightly different way, and maybe those can be related. I mean, you can relate to them as well very, very easily.
Mhm.
So that was one of the reasons. Another thing that I would like to mention over here is, uh, in Assam, there are, it's like, you know, a flower garden. I mean, the state of Assam, it's like a flower garden. And I think from that point of view, the entire Northeast is such.
Mhm.
There are, people from all over the country living there. You have the, the indigenous tribes, a
Mhm.
lot of them, more than 50 tribes, uh, a host of languages that are spoken, that are written as well. And it's not just Assamese in Assam and Manipuri in Manipur, or
Right.
okay, there are many tribal languages which are beautiful, very beautiful. In Assam itself, I mean, there are so many languages that are spoken. Assamese is definitely one of them. Then you also have Boro, then you also have Kosari, and there are many other such languages that are spoken. And literature,
Mhm.
music, and a lot of other cultural stuff also come up from these languages, from people, from these different ethnic groups. It is a very beautiful thing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there are also rifts that happen because of this.
Right.
Okay. And one of the very common rifts that I've come across, I mean, that I have personally experienced during my growing up years, is between Assamese and non-Assamese, what do you call, linguistic groups.
Mhm.
Not all people are like that. You'll find a few. If there are 100 people, you may find one person who has got that kind of a mindset, who, considers that, anybody who doesn't speak Assamese is an outsider.
Right.
Or if someone is not born to an Assamese family, uh, he or she is an outsider.
Mm.
Now, there are people, there are Biharis, there are Marwaris, there are Punjabis, there are Bengalis, there are people from all over the country who grew up there, were
Mhm.
born there. So these people, the all the other ethnic groups, and also the Assamese people, they had been struggling, and they had been fighting an existential crisis for a very long time.
Mhm.
Okay, to some extent there are political forces also, but I'd not like
Mhm.
to go that way. But there is
Mhm.
this existential crisis. The Assamese speaking people, they to some extent fear that their language, their culture, uh, and their everything that they have, they might get extinct, not extinct, or they might get overwhelmed by the other cultures,
Mhm.
or the languages of other people. Whereas the other people also think that, or they think that, it might happen that they may lose their own individual identity.
Right.
So there is this rift that is going on for a very long time, and it has impact on youth, on the people who grew up there, be it from any linguistic group.
Mhm.
It has an impact on their minds as well. When they go out of the state for studies, it impacts their minds. They may come across people who are not that welcome.
Mhm.
There is one common thing that happens, if you allow me to
Of course.
state this. This is something very funny as well. I mean, uh, and I think this is one of the experiences that most of the people from Assam or Northeast at some point of time might have faced, or still face. I
Mhm.
uh, went to Pune with a job in 2003.
Mhm.
Okay, and I was working in a call center at that point in time. Okay, and there are people from all over India
Mhm.
coming to work in call centers. Call centers at that point in time used to pay a lot. You you can keep your salary aside. You can just bask in the
Mhm.
what I call incentives that you get. So one of the guys from some other state during one of the breaks asked me, "Do you actually need passport?"
Mm.
So there was another friend who was also from Assam. He said, "Didn't you read geography properly in your school?"
Mhm.
So these kind of questions come in. So
Right.
I would never be able to validate whether that question was intentional for that person, for that colleague of mine to ask. But these questions keep coming up. There is this tussle with identity going on forever. So
Mhm.
you the, this particular story, you also you also experience a bit of it, and
Mhm.
how it impacts the youths growing up in that particular region.
Right. Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, that is one thing, and you rightly pointed out that the cultural aspects, the beautiful things, those are also there, and also the not so good things
Mhm.
impact their lives. Those are also there. So
Right.
that's how it is.
Right. So, I mean, you did touch upon a lot of themes that, we already read in the book, right? Like, I mean, about identity and about this whole urban and, like, your own homeland divide that people face, and just all these, like, the whole political and cultural background that sometimes, like, you cannot always separate them. So these are the things I would like to talk about a bit more. But before that, I just wanted to also ask, I mean, not even ask, like, tell you that, the all the popular cultural references that you've put in. So, like, the whole 90s Bollywood music, Shah Rukh Khan, and also, like you mentioned, the Assamese songs. And you've given translations for each of those songs, even the Hindi Bollywood ones, which was beautiful. And also literary references like that of Waiting for Godot and Browning and Keats's poems. So, like, is this something that you've grown up with? And, like, is this something that you wanted, like, all of us to, like, just, read this book and just, like, go through this nostalgic drive? Because we've all grown up with these things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, you kind of nailed it. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean anybody who has grown up during those times, they will be able to relate it to it, whether they are from Guwahati or Assam or any part of the country, or even people who have kind of left the country for better opportunities, who are living outside. They
Right.
will also be able to relate to these. These are the things. I mean, for example, I mean, if I can bring up that song "Pehla Nasha Pehla Kumar."
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, that was the craze during that time. You grew up with the music of the piano. Every time
Right.
that you should play, even if you didn't have someone to share your feelings with, you will have some thoughts in your mind coming, and
Right.
you'll have some feelings coming up. Even now, when we listen to these songs, it's
Mhm.
an instant connect.
Mhm.
And when I was writing this, as I told you, these things came up quite naturally. It was not like, okay, let me put this here. It will,
Mhm.
get readers. It will get the readers to read a few more pages. It was not like that. These songs or these references, they just came in as naturally as it would come to anyone. Say, for example, there's this mention of a very popular story from Ruskin Bond, a thief.
Mhm. Yes.
It's a small anecdote, and it's
Mhm.
kind of this character. He has no idea what a short story is,
Mhm.
so he he thinks that a short story is a story which is short in length, and then
Right.
and then he realize. I mean, he finds out something else what a short story is.
Mhm.
So uh, that story, I think anybody who has grown up during that time have found it in their school books.
True.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that became an instant connect. Okay, I mean, I didn't have to think while writing those pieces. Those
Mhm.
sections. You know, they just flowed in, and I every time and every line that I wrote around those sections, I felt that if I'm able to connect, my readers will automatically be able to connect, because those
True.
kind of uh, lives that people have grown up during that time. And also, say for example, if someone who have grown up or who was born much later than 90s, people who are growing up now, they might get interested to know how their parents lived or how their uncles lived or how their elder brothers or sisters they grew up. So
True. Mm-hmm.
that's an instant connect that I felt, and it was while writing about yearnings, about love, about loss, about the backdrop that we just talked about, that these
Mm-hmm.
things just flowed in naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Because particularly if we talk about Hindi songs, where
Mm-hmm.
are not they?
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can't go past them. I mean, and every age has got its own favorites. Like, when I was growing up, Kumar Sanu, Abhijit,
Mm-hmm.
Udit Narayan, I mean, any song, even if that's the worst song that you would not like to listen to now,
Yeah,
at that point in time, you might have definitely listened to it.
yeah.
Nowadays, for example, we have Arijit or we have Arman Malik. I mean, even if they sing something that's not that great, we would still like to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because that's an instant connect,
Right,
just
right, right.
flowing naturally.
Yeah. I agree because while I was reading it, I was thinking about all the stories that my parents have told me, and they have definitely mentioned "Pehla Nasha" the song as well. I think this is something that your generation definitely holds a great importance with. Also,
Correct.
like you mentioned, you put it very aptly before that. This brings out the narrative. Like it just the narrative itself comes alive. When you're mentioning all these references, because like you said, there's an instant connect, there's a like you can completely relate to what's happening, right? So definitely one of those this is something that I really liked about the book as well. And also I feel like your choice of narrating the story in the first person perspective is something that really also brings this out, because in the book there's a lot of times where the author directly speaks to the reader that this is something that's happening. So I feel like this is also something that I think that it was one of your decisions to sort of help us make that instant connect to whatever is going on in the story.
Yes, I absolutely agree with it.
Mhm.
And the author, uh, I mean, the narrator or the protagonist, speaks to the author, speaks to its readers directly. So I think this is also the point when I can, talk a little about the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at this guy now, okay, his name is Nilim
Neelie.
Bhattacharya. Okay, and the way I look at him now, he's kind of a guy who you might come across any day. I mean, he works in a BPO, and
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of he also puts him blames his own tardiness for not being able to write a good sellable story for a very
Right,
long
right.
time and stuff like that. But he's also kind of peculiar from a point of view that he picks up his laptop and starts writing a story at a place where you don't think someone would try to write. And he
Mm-hmm.
picks up that laptop and goes to the, what you call, to the crematorium, and that is where his story starts. Now, when I talk about this particular character, uh, he is trying to write a good sellable story,
Mm-hmm.
and he is kind of, if you read the first few chapters, you know that there is a sense of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of desperation in him to, write it down somehow. I need to complete writing it. There's this kind of thing. I can't sit on it for a very long time. That's the kind of thing that he thinks. And gradually, as you progress, you get to see that he becomes a bit more comfortable talking directly to the readers.
Right.
He has he has readers, he has people in his mind. There's one point in time he says that, I don't want to get my sins absolved by telling you the story. You're not someone who can absolve my sins. I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you because I need to tell you. It's
Right.
something like that. So there's a kind of a desperation in him to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think keeping in mind this aspect, bringing, trying to narrate the entire story in first person made sense.
Mm.
Yes, I mean, the first draft when I wrote it was all in third person, and the
Oh,
narrative style was a bit different at
okay.
that point in time, with multiple points of view coming in. So
Right.
here you don't see too much of a shift in the point of view, but there is definitely, the way this narrator, this particular protagonist talks. I mean, it's kind of a casual conversation that he is kind of having. It's not like a very
Right.
extraordinary kind of a conversation that he's trying to have with his readers
Mhm.
or potential readers.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like this sort of writing style definitely works very well for the book. I mean, I cannot even imagine anymore how it would have sounded like, in the third person perspective, something that you were trying to do. So I'm glad that you made this decision. Talking about your protagonist, Neelam, I think we should touch upon some of the themes that you've talked about in the book. So one of the aspects is definitely coming of age. We see this
Yeah,
character literally growing up and him finding inspiration from just around him, and like from the people around him, from the place he is in, to write, right? And also all these political instances that you put in, which is obviously very important, because I mean it everything goes hand in hand. And one of the things that really comes up is the identity crisis, like you mentioned before. So his
yeah,
Assamness versus his Indianness, and also how in one of the chapters, his friend tells him about how he can use his Assamness to sort of write it in his stories. So sort of like being patriotic through his stories, talking about his place where he was born and everything, about his people through his story. So, like, can you elaborate on that? Your thoughts about all of it?
yeah. So as I mentioned earlier as well, I mean, the the story is, you know it's kind of, I wouldn't say inspired, but it is
Mm-hmm.
kind of retelling a lot of stories that happened. I wouldn't say stories, but a lot of incidents that happened during that time, being those 20 years, uh, between 1990 and 2010.
Right.
So this particular narrator, I mean, he has tried his level best to keep himself away, but he has somehow got influenced by all of them,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's political or a social, uh, event that has taken place, or something that has happened, or it might be just an idea that might have sparked in his mind. So his narrative flows from all these triggers, whether it's political, or whether it's kind of any kind of event that has taken place. Now, the triggers, if you have noticed, I mean, they are also responsible for the steps that he takes,
Right.
or the other characters take in their lives,
Right.
quite unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that, they're kind of consciously taking a particular decision. At times they're taking decisions unconsciously. At the back of the mind, they have that backdrop, the social political backdrop in their mind. So that, I mean, from that point of view, I think these triggers become very important. For example, if you allow me to talk about one, I mean, he has this peculiar idea of buns. All of us in
Mm-hmm.
India have experienced buns. So
Yeah.
bund is like, shutting down all businesses and everything, and with, with, and mostly it is done by political parties or social organizations, you know, what do you call, to put across the demands. Now he says that, how are buns? Buns is like, you're telling your mother that you don't like to have bitter gourd fries.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. And the way you're telling it is like, you're asking your kidney, your heart, your body organs to, stop working for a moment.
Right.
Okay. And with the hope that once you do all those things, once you stop your body from working, your mother may not serve bitter gourd fries the next time.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality may be very different, because your mother doesn't know that you have intentionally stopped all those things. Or even if she knows, she might still come back with a plate of bitter gourd fries for you. So his ideas are like this, the way. So his worldview is kind of based on the kind of life that he has seen that.
Mhm.
And you know that is also the kind of life that I have seen, or people around me have seen, although it's not autobiographical.
Right.
Nitin and I are very different. Okay,
Mm.
from
Okay.
from a lot of, but definitely there are stuff that it's easier and safer to bring in when you bring it from your own life,
Mhm.
when you extend, when your characters are kind of extended version of yourself to some extent, not everything. So from that point of view, I think this character Nilim Bhattacharya, he could have been anywhere in India. I mean, he could have been in any part of India. Assam, for me, it was convenient to talk about because I grew
Right.
up there. But he could have
Right.
born in any part of India, and he could have churned out stories like this that you read in this book in any part, because those triggers would have been the same. Those
Mhm.
triggers haven't changed, although they have become cliches by now.
True. Yeah, I think I that's why I feel like the book itself brings out the title is just so apt for the book, because we actually see him go through the cycle of cliches as well, and meanwhile we ourselves are going through the cycle of cliches throughout our lives. So yeah, I mean, definitely. And also, talking about Nilim and just all the things that he goes through, I feel like I should take a few audience questions here as well.
Yeah,
So,
sure, sure.
yeah,
I can
because
see a few copies.
yes. So, you have talked so much about, like, Assam, and I feel like this is a place where I would invite you to, give some advice to maybe some Assamese authors, or just any budding authors, about, like, any advice that you have as like a novelist now. And one person has said that, coming from Assam, do you write in Assamese or Bengali or only English? I think the literary culture in Assam is very strong, but somehow the exposure is not there much in terms of large lit fests and all. So, how would you suggest the Assamese authors finding their way out of this?
I think, I mean, this is one of the most important questions
Mhm.
that's doing rounds for the last few years, and I think it has been doing rounds for quite a lot of time now. That the literature, it's very rich literature that we have over there, and it's not because I am from there. That's why I'm telling you. You
Mhm.
might read a few of these authors. I would, if you allow me, I can take their names as well.
Of course.
If you read someone like Aruni Kashyap or Janvi Barua, or if you read Mitra Fukan, these authors, they are doing a stellar job in bringing out, or representing the culture, the mm, the way, the issues that kind of haunt people, that have been haunting people for a long time. And also, and at the same time, they also bring in, they also put those things in a way that makes sense for a global readership. But at the same time, I mean, there is this question, this issue of underrepresentation. So a
Mm.
lot of things are happening at the moment. uh, one of the most important things that is happening is translating Assamese novels or Assamese stories into English or in other languages. A lot of authors, renowned authors, are doing that. And in some part of my life, I think I'd be really eager to take up this kind of a project.
Mhm.
It really, kind of excites me a lot.
Mhm.
The other way around, also, I mean, there are stories written in English, like this book, Cycle of Cliches.
Mhm.
Now, this can reach out to the people of Assam if this is translated into Assamese.
Mhm.
So someday, I might even translate it into Assamese or any other language that I'm aware of. So
Mhm.
that also helps me to answer the other question. Yes, I
Mm.
do write in Assamese or Bengali as well. I also write in Hindi at times.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's because I grew up. in that environment. I mean, we had to we studied. I mean,
Mhm.
even now people study. Their uh, uh, people growing up there, they do study their mother tongue that you anyways pick up. You also pick up Hindi because it's so much everywhere, and
Mhm.
we love Hindi as much as we love any other languages that we are born to. And at the same time, you also pick up the local language. You pick up Assamese, or you pick up some other language. Like if you're living in one of the Bodo districts, you might just pick up Bodo. Or if you're
Mhm.
living in any vicinity where a lot of people from the tribes are there, you might pick up some tribal language as well. So it's quite
True.
natural for us to come up, become multilingual and express ourselves also in
Mm.
different languages.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think this is something that is really important, especially during the pandemic. If I may revisit this thing that we were talking about before, I mean, bridging the gap is something that is so important because India is all about unity and diversity. But until and unless that gap is bridged, how will I be able to, like, as someone who can only read in Hindi and English, it's very important for me, and it's something that I really encourage the authors to do. Is just translations, or like just all these other ways that the authors come up with, so that more audience can engage with their content, with their art. And obviously, which is something that you've done in your book as well. Like I mentioned, you have translated not just the Assamese songs, but also the Hindi songs. And just, I feel like this is a great advice. Obviously, is there anything else you would like to say to just authors who, like, lack in confidence maybe, or they don't know where to start in, like, what to talk about, what to write about, and like who to go to once they are done writing?
I think the best thing to go about is to meet people. When I say meet people, I mean real people. I
Mm.
mean, that's where stories come out of. I mean, go and meet people, uh, listen to what they're talking. I mean, don't kind of consciously eavesdrop into the conversation, but yeah, as much as possible. I mean, it's from observation. I think where stories comes out. You may, and what I felt, initially how things were, when I moved to Kolkata from Guwahati,
Mhm.
I would kind of get into an automatic, mode of judgmental mode. Okay, okay, the people in my state, they speak in this way, they take things in this way, people here take in this way, these guys are good, bad, ugly, something like that. Okay.
Right.
But later on, I just removed the judgment part. So I think that is very important. I mean, just observe. I mean, as authors, it is our responsibility to observe our surroundings, our thoughts, our feelings, and you know the workings um, of everything that is going on around. And that is from where the stories are going to come up. A lot of people talk about having a unique voice and sounding very different. I think those things come with time. I mean, you know, mm, they may take time to come up. You may not be someone who has really got a unique voice right at the first story that you've written,
Right.
but your story may be very unique,
Mhm.
and that is what matters.
Mhm.
And also, I think even if your story is not unique, please keep writing.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the most
That's the
brilliant
most important.
advice, you can give. Like you mentioned before as well, even if you don't feel like writing, just sit there and write a few lines every day at least, right? That's a brilliant advice. So, talking about writing, we should also talking about your, publishing process. How is publishing like with Yukioto for you?
I think it's been one of the best experiences that I had. I mean, first of all, I'll be very honest with you. I never thought that you guys are going to accept it.
Okay.
When I got the contract letter and everything, I mean, I received it. I mean, if you allow me, I mean, I received it on a day when I was just thinking of moving away from it completely and
Okay.
focusing on something else,
Okay.
some other work. I mean, short stories and stuff like that. So while having dinner, I received your mail, and it changed things for the next 1 year.
Mm.
So working with you, Kyoto, it's been a wonderful experience so far. The editorial team, I have found, particularly Diksha Goswami, who, you
Mhm.
know, took all the pains to go through all these pages and edit it. So I'm really thankful to her. You know, the kind of advice and timely advice that she came up with,
Mhm.
particularly with the structuring of the story. So that has been really great. And also, uh, when the book got published,
Mhm.
I mean, so far, I mean, the kind of support and the timely advice that I've got, I think those are really, those have really been great.
Mhm.
One of the things I would say, I mean, to anyone who, if there is anyone in the audience who's aspiring to write, aspiring to get published with Kyoto, I believe you can trust on Kyoto's professionalism. That's the best thing,
Mhm.
I would say.
Right. I mean, obviously, like putting out a book is not just writing it, but also just going through every little process until you have the hard copy with you.
Yeah,
So it really is important that the publishing process is also smooth, so that like that one-on-one that you can have with the publisher is very important. So yeah,
yeah.
thank you for that. Thank you for recommending
And
to Kyoto.
one thing that I'd like to
Mhm.
mention,
Yeah.
uh, since the day I got the contract and so far till now,
Mhm.
there's been a lot of other things that has been happening in my life. I mean, everyone has their fair share of challenges. So
Mhm.
due to a lot of challenges and also because of pandemic coming in
Right.
between, at certain places I got, the hindrances that were created. You know,
Mhm.
say for example, I had, committed to submit something of, the manuscript, a revised manuscript at a particular date, and I could see that I will not be able to do so. When I got back to you guys,
Mhm.
I was expecting some kind of, you know, negative vibes or some things like this. That why are you getting delayed? Why are you not able to meet deadlines? So I expected things like this, but those are the times I got the maximum support. That you're so accommodating in those terms. That's really been great working with
Okay. So like I'm hoping if you like if you have future plans for any other books, I'm hoping that you would like to get published with us again. So on that topic, I did want to ask you about like what does the future has in store for you and your writing? And one of our audience questions is also about that because this person says that the book gives a hint of a sequel. Like yeah, I was going to mention that as well. So like what are the future plans for you?
you. Yeah, currently I'm working on a short story collection, and
Okay.
I I hope that I'll be able to kind of offer it to you very soon.
Mm-hmm.
As for the sequel is concerned, I have this, what do you call, this I wouldn't say yearning, but it's there's this craving to write a sequel to this.
Okay.
Okay, but I have not
Okay.
kind of finalized. There are
Okay.
things that I just don't want to just do it for the sake of
Mm-hmm.
doing it. Uh, there is, if I can, if the sequel happens, and if it happens naturally, I think that would be the best thing
Mm-hmm.
to happen.
Okay, but you do have short stories and other things in the future, right? While you're also writing for other publications like the Assam Tribune as well.
Mhm.
So I feel like I mean this is definitely not the end of the journey for you with cycle of cliches.
No, no, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning. It has taken a while. I mean, this book
Mm-hmm.
has taken a while. Uh, but this book has also been, I would say, uh, the most important learning phase in my life.
Mm-hmm.
In these 9 years,
Mm-hmm.
I not only got some, what do you call, insights as to how
Mm-hmm.
to approach writing
Mm-hmm.
or creating stories rather, uh, but also how to, take it to a publisher, get it get it to the stage of getting this, hard copy on your
Mhm.
hand. So this entire phase, I take it as a learning, and I think it's just the beginning. I mean, mm,
Right.
in our country, we have examples of, writing careers spanning over 70 years. Like, for example, Ruskin Bond, he has been writing for 70 years. So for
Right.
me, it's just the beginning.
Hmm.
And if I get the blessings of everyone, I think I'll be able to continue with this for the rest of my life.
Okay. Well, definitely looking forward to whatever you have for us, because, like I mentioned, I was a big fan of this book. I loved every single bit of it. I, in fact, read it in a day. This is something that I want to tell the audience. It's just you won't be able to put it down. This is what I wanted to say. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Niladri, to talking to me about it today, and just talking about just everything from the book to your experience growing up in Assam, and just everything. It's been a beautiful talk, and I hope the audience loved it as well. So thank you so much again for joining us, and I hope our audience also had a great day. So yeah, that's it for today.
And yeah, thank you so much, Crispy, for conducting this interview in such a wonderful manner. Uh,
Hmm.
and I'm also thankful to all the audience who have joined this, for asking the questions. And mm, and I really hope that all of you find it an engaging read, as Crispy has just mentioned.
Yeah.
Uh, thank you. Thank you all.
All right, well, thank you everyone. So this is the end of the live today. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, Niladri.
Bye.
Bye bye.